often say that the two most important days of your life are the day you're born and then the day you find out why you're born.
To reason with someone is to motivate them to do or accept topics, ideas, and issues through discussion and having conversations.
This podcast is about the relationship with ourselves and the relationship with others, finding our stability in our self-worth, and how do we actually be in healthy relationships. We find this out through connection, compassion, and communication. Reach out, connect with me, like, subscribe, comment. I want to unpack whatever it is that we can to really get to the nitty and gritty of finding out how do we get better in ourselves and how do we get better in our relationships.
To reason with someone is to motivate them to do or accept topics, ideas, and issues through discussion and having conversations.
This podcast is about the relationship with ourselves and the relationship with others, finding our stability in our self-worth, and how do we actually be in healthy relationships. We find this out through connection, compassion, and communication. Reach out, connect with me, like, subscribe, comment. I want to unpack whatever it is that we can to really get to the nitty and gritty of finding out how do we get better in ourselves and how do we get better in our relationships.
If you're listening, it would be amazing support and help if you can subscribe, 5-star, or review the podcast. Share it with your friends or your family. This is an incredible podcast with Joe Williams this morning. Joe is a proud First Nations Aboriginal man. After forging a successful professional sporting career, Joe battled the majority of his life with suicide, ideation, and bipolar disorder. After a suicide attempt in 2012, Joe felt his purpose was to help people who struggle with mental illness. Through customized workshops, Joe talks of dealing with adversities, struggle, resilience, addiction, connection, emotional well-being, and healing trauma in schools, communities, correctional services, sporting clubs, and workplaces. He is an incredible advocate for the space that we are in this world, and listening to his stories is something that we should all be doing. Coming back to our First Nations people and the way that they live and thrive and can come home to nature and to community is something else. So enjoy. We get through so much stuff, and I'm very honored to have Joe Williams in the hot seat to have another podcast.
All right. So welcome back to the podcast. I'm sitting here with Joe Williams. I'm super stoked that you're here, man.
How you doing, buddy? Everything good?
Yeah, look, I'm fresh. I'm ready to go. This is round 2. Let's see if we can get into it this time. And I love why we decided to pause. I think you made a really good point of being like, you know what? I used to would have figured out how to get the kids away from me so that I could focus on doing my work. And now, based on what's going on in the environment and what their needs are, you said, Jackson, I'm going to have to read a book. And I was just like, this is exactly why we do this. So
I guess for context and people who don't know, we were due to record this a while ago now. It was a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And I had my young one home for some reason. I don't know if she wasn't well.
I think it's
school holidays. Yeah. Yeah, so it was a while ago. So not meaning to date the podcast, but yeah, she was home. Well, both of them were home for school holidays, and yeah, she was usually pretty good. She'll entertain herself quite well. It was just one of those days where she just needed her dad and wanted to be around her dad, and you know, I guess I talk a lot about parenting these days. And the old me would have just pushed on. And I just know the challenges that can bring now with young people, not in the moment. You know, we deal with it in the moment, and the moment is actually quite easy to deal with when we do this sort of stuff. But when we actually silence and shut down what the young person is feeling in those moments, the repercussions long term that can have, we don't particularly know a great deal, or it's not particularly spoken about a great deal in the early days of parenting. So, well, it wasn't 20 years ago, put it that way, when I first became a parent. So, yeah, I'm really grateful that I have the insight now to be able to do that. I also have the relationship with my kids to be able to do that. And I'm thankful for you that you just said, you know what, Joe, this is the things that we're going to be talking about today. And I just saw you in action of what you do. So I'm completely cool with it. So I'm really grateful, mate.
Yeah. No, and I mean, it's just a good segue, I guess, into probably what we'll talk a lot about today, because I think it is so vital. And yeah, I think we're both diving into a lot of that at the moment, where we find ourselves in terms of the parenting world of how do we look after our kids. I'm not a parent, but I do work a lot with parents, and I work a lot with young kids and have done for a long time. So it's just a constant I come back to that as the passion. So that being said, let's jump into it. Who the hell are you, and what do you do?
Then or now or both. Like I'm lucky enough to have lived enough for about 3 or 4 people. You know, like there's been multiple parts of my world that have all run its course in different ways. And I'm really, really grateful to have had those different experiences. I often, when talking about this, I often say that the 2 most important days of your life are the day you're born and then the day you find out why you're born. We all go through this life trying to find out why we're here without actually consciously knowing that that's what we're doing, right? We're all placed on this path of purpose, and so many of us. There's a great quote, that there's millions of graveyards around the world with people that died at 25 but are buried at 75. So it's when you think about the depth of that, you understand that there's a stackload of people who are just on this treadmill of life that aren't actually living a purpose.
Yeah.
For a long time, I thought my purpose was about sport. I thought that's why I was here. That's what I was here to do. Until the roads of first rugby league and then boxing, and then the difficult challenges that I went through mentally and emotionally back in 2012 probably birthed me into the work that I do now, which is hard. It could be hard for some people to hear, but I had to get to those low points to be able to learn who I am now, right? And that has taken a great deal of work. It's taken loads of understanding, awareness, and also educating myself about who I am. So for a large part of my life, I was a professional sports person. I got paid to throw a footy around, and then I got paid to get punched in the head. Like that was my job, was sport for a long time. And then I under sport, whilst it's a very, very, very minimal people that can be involved and stay in that line of work for the rest of their life. I was put on a path to helping other people, and that helping other people in what it was to what it is now has changed as well. So I'm really grateful to just I do stuff in the mental health and trauma space, and then been beginning to get pulled. I guess we're talking about purpose and what it is. Like I'm beginning to be pulled into that parenting space. That wasn't a conscious decision to do. It was one of those pathways that I'm being sort of dragged onto, which I'm really, really, really fortunate to be able to do, and to be able to, now hold seminars of, talking and educating dads about, how to best interact with their young people. And me 20 years ago, when I first became a dad, like, and the guy who's sitting here in front of you now are 2 completely different people. So, like, I'm really grateful to have learnt, a stack load of different things to help me to be who I am now.
And I'm sure there's so many things that are highlights that allow you to, sit here and be the man you are today. So I'm sure it's very hard to pinpoint one, but you mentioned paths. There's a couple of things that put you onto this path, and then now you're onto this path. I guess going back, what put you onto the path? What threw you into it, I guess, in that original way to now I'm going to go and help people?
Yeah, it was unfortunately the most challenging day of my life in 2022. In 2012 when I had a suicide attempt. Fortunate enough to have woken up from that, and over. I can't say it happened straight away. It wasn't this magical thing that happened. It was, psych ward stays and months of self-analyzing and just, I've always been a questioner. Why the hell am I like this? Like I've always questioned things. And which led me down the path of, after a number of years to begin to talk about it, and again, we're got to have a look at the times in which we do these things. Back in 2012, when I first started talking about my mental health journey, there wasn't a great deal of people that were talking about it.
No.
And it was only those type of conversations, and I copped some flack about it because I talk so openly about it and so vulnerable about it. Those type of conversations were only afforded in the rooms of the therapists. In the walls of where it doesn't leave those walls.
Yeah.
So the fact that I was actually speaking about it publicly in things like schools and community forums, and people got a little bit freaked out about it. I'm like, you can't speak about this. You're just a sportsman. You're not qualified to talk about this. And I'm like, well, for the last 10 years, I've tried to get help. The people who were supposed to help me couldn't understand it, couldn't help me understand it. Now I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that actually come up to me in those early days and were like, what you just said, Joe, in how you said it, I go through the exact same thing. I've just never had the words to talk about what it is. Right. So it almost, and those early days, I also said that I was like the conduit between the people and the professional.
Yeah.
Like I then spoke to people about, I'm not qualified to help you with this stuff. I'm just normalizing my experience. What I do encourage you to do is to go and get some help with that. And, like that was a journey in itself, copping the barbs from community and the people that had been in this space for a long time as well. Like there was some tough conversations that I had around that stuff.
Yeah.
But again, like what's back to your original question, what threw me into this way is that I recognized that what I was doing was helping people to understand what they were experiencing. And what I was doing to help people was helping me.
Yeah.
So in a way, selfish way, like the more I did it, the more it helped me.
Yeah.
So
it helps you be accountable,
Yeah, that was the other thing as well, is that if I'm speaking about that, of course, around alcoholism and drug addiction as well, if I'm speaking about this stuff and I'm talking about, how I'm clean and how I'm sober, then I've got to keep living that life.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep doing the work to make sure that I do live that life. So like there was accountability with it. There was responsibility with it. And there was also, I felt an obligation once I started to open these doors to, help people walk through them.
100%. And naturally you just change lives along the way. And I think that, that can feel good naturally. But yeah, it's like the selfish way of doing this that I just like is that obligation. And I sit in the same space. I think it's, it's so vital to be able to kind of put this wherever it is in our understanding out, so that it's something that someone else can potentially, digest and then be able to kind of make sense of, and then again, if that then allows them to shift in their systems and help them eventually keep kind of that movement going, then, I mean, look at it now, 2024. There's plenty of people talking about this stuff, and you might have been a guy doing it that as a rugby league bloke, a boxer talking about this shit. Now it's like there's plenty of rugby league and boxers talking about this shit, and you pave the way for that, but that then keeps the ball rolling. I guess
I also think that we're also at a point, and like I've sort of, I won't say I've upset some people, but like there's some people that might feel, because they've come to me and they were like, telling their story and all of that sort of stuff. And what people don't understand is that when I started doing it 12 years ago, no one was doing it. So it was that little seed being planted, right? And whilst I think it's fantastic that there's loads and loads and loads of people doing it, there's also safe ways in which we need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the challenge that I have with people that are in this space now is that they feel that telling their story, and I'm respectful in what I say, but telling their story is healing automatically for people without understanding that vicariously we're just sharing pain. And we need to then also ask ourselves, why are we doing this? Because if we're spilling pain out all over everyone else, then we're leaving people sicker than we found them. So why people connected with me at the time, it was because of the rawness, because it was the vulnerability. It was also because of the job that I had as a sports person.
Yeah.
Like the profile in that, people found, well, there's this guy who does this thing, and he's not supposed to show that type of vulnerability. And he's supposed to be big and strong and tough, which I'm far from, by the way. But he's supposed to be big and strong and tough in this world of brutality with sport. And he's showing the deepest, darkest inner secrets. That was the inspiring thing.
Yeah.
The inspiring thing wasn't the story of me challenging mentally and emotionally with what I experienced most days of the year. The inspiring story was he's supposed to be something else. And then he's pulling down all the walls and letting people know that he's real.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes when we see things and see people on TV, things like sports people, they're a little bit out of reach.
Yeah.
We put them on this pedestal because they get paid stack loads of money, and they've got the fame and the profile of what comes with that. So they can almost be in a different type of vortex, and they're a little bit out of reach.
Yeah.
Where in the times what I did, how I did it with the storytelling of what I was doing, it was like this guy normalizes what I feel as well. So where I got to and how I got to that point, I'm really lucky, really lucky that I've been a storyteller, a narrator all my life. And also, I'm lucky to be part of the oldest living existence of humankind that have been storytellers for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So there's got to be a little bit of natural ways in how I do that as well.
We also keep that alive too, right? And being able to continue to live in that way and show that side of you. And I think the block and the demons that kind of stop you from doing that, and then getting pushed back onto the path of being like, this is what you need to do. You need to come back to telling stories rather than keeping all your stories in. And then look how more connected, more accessible, more authentic you can become. And then everyone can reach you because you can reach you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like being able to, being reachable. And how you be reachable is being normalized.
Yeah.
just being like everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's where I think, I guess for me in the early days, that's what it was. I've always been, I think, with my journey of sobriety, because I wasn't this in the early days of being a footballer. I've always been reachable because I've always been with the people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've always not seen myself. Eric Thomas, he says, E.T. the hip hop preacher, he says, I'm not a leader, I'm a shepherd. You know, like, I don't lead people, I'm with the people.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always seen myself as somebody who I'm no bigger than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't always like that because my ego was out of control when I was playing footy in the early years.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the lifestyle that you live or led to believe.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I've always prided myself on being that shepherd, being with the people and leading from within.
Mm-hmm. And I think you know, the passion still lies there, so you can still keep doing it in whatever way that looks like. And I love that, and I guess that's why we connect in being able to see how you just keep living that journey. You know, you don't hang the boots up with this kind of thing. You know, which is I think what it's all about. So I've got a bit of a pivot question. We're talking about the fact that, you know, in 2012 there wasn't a lot of people doing it. In 2024 there's heaps of people doing it. In one way that's great, but in another way things are getting worse.
Mm.
Why is it, what's your opinion on that? Like, why are we still in this space? We're getting sicker and sicker and we're getting more and more depressed. At the same time, we've got more people talking about it. We've got more people connecting and more people sharing about, I guess, trying to be real and trying to be reachable.
I keynoted the Suicide Prevention Australia conference last year. And the way that I guess the format of it couldn't have been any better, right? As far as where I was supposed to talk, right?
Mm.
If the order was jumbled up, it wouldn't have had the effect that it had, right? Both sides of politics got up and said, we've got bipartisan support and we're committed to doing X, Y, Z, and we're going to help this country do what we do and talk about mental health and commit, you know, more funds to mental health and everything's going to be beautiful. And then the major sponsor got up and said, we've trained this amount of people and this is what we're doing with that training and all of these people who are trained are going out and speaking with and educating this amount of people and everything's great and we're doing good things. And then the CEO gets up and says, everyone's committed, everyone's doing great and this is what we're going to be doing and everything is going to get better and everything's fantastic. And I got up after that and I was like, I got news for you. Hold on to your seats because this ain't going to be pretty. Right? And I said, if there's more money in mental health than there ever has been, there's more conversations and awareness and training in mental health than there ever has been. There's more people talking about this stuff. And there's more commitment from government and there's more organizations than there ever has been to help people. Why in the hell are we dying more? We're sicker than we ever have been. If everyone's getting up here saying it's great and everyone's patting each other on the back, we're all talking shit to each other because what we're doing ain't working. Right? And this is the challenge I have with getting in these type of forums and these type of spaces is that the same organizations get the same funding every year. Yet if I'm a footy coach and my results go backwards, I'm out of a job.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about our community, the First Peoples community, the oldest existence of humankind in the world, get funded billions of dollars in helping things with mental health and the health rates and what, you know, the challenges of closing the gap in this country. But the money don't go to us. Like, that was one of the biggest conversations during the referendum. Though, like, you get so many billions of dollars as it is, the money don't go to us. It goes to non-Aboriginal people. It goes to non-Indigenous organisations to work with us and try and tell us what to do and how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, why we're sicker than ever. Like, start to listen to people that have lived for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. I wrote something down this morning, and it's like, kids aren't sicker than ever, right? This can be challenging to hear. Kids aren't sicker than ever. The environment and the way that in which we are raising our kids is sicker than ever.
That's right.
Right? There's more hours. We're working more hours, the higher cost of living, less time with our kids and our loved ones. Like, the way in which we are living is the reason why we're so sick.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there's more people diagnosed than there ever has been. And, you know, there's a brilliant book by Gabor Mate. It says, which is called Hold On to Your Kids. And essentially he talks about how we're outsourcing our kids. So we got people, we got the challenges in our communities. You say, what's the issue? Right? Attachment is the issue.
Yeah.
We're not forming secure attachments with our primary carers. Our kids are farmed out the door. And they're farmed out the door because of the high pressures that we're living in society and the cost of living. Like, the way we're doing things is just absolute madness. And people are going, you know, the cost of living is incredible, and that's because, you know, we need more funding around these different types of challenges. We need to spend more time with our kids. We need to spend more quality time with each other.
That's
right. I will say it again, and I get a lot of people offside with this because there's a lot of, you know, well-meaning non-Indigenous people that work with our mob. We're a business. The sicker we are, the more people are in jobs. They don't want to close the gap. Because if they wanted to close the gap, the millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars that go to non-Indigenous organisations to help our communities wouldn't be given to the same people year after year after year. It makes no sense, mate, to the way that we should be living as human beings. It makes absolutely no sense the way we're doing it now. That's why we're sicker than ever.
It's such a hard thing to, as you're right, there's going to be lots of offsiders with that sort of thing. And there's the natural part of that. The reaction is because we don't know what to do. The reaction is, yeah, but we're trying. Or, you know, and I think that just, it's like, we're just not looking in the right areas. I'll give you some few examples. It's like, I was talking with Tim James, he's a local member for Willoughby, and lucky enough to sit in front of him. And he said, you know, how can I help? I said, you can't help me. I said, what I'm going to say to you is not something that you're going to be able to have enough of a push in Parliament to be able to change, because it won't make any sense to people. And, you know, he's talking about, we've got more kids vaping than ever, more kids on devices than ever, more kids having body issues than ever. And I said, so if we keep funding prevention on smoking, prevention on, you know, screening porn and screening certain games and allowing kids to access different TikToks and Instagram or whatever, and we, you know, get more funding on the Butterfly Foundation so that kids aren't going to have body issues or whatever, then we're just going to be putting more thing on this branch of the underlying trunk underneath it, which is the real issue, which is they're all disconnected. They're all disconnected, and every single one of them are coping mechanisms or a reaction or a consequence of what's going on. So you want real change. And I said to him, and I hope he listens to this, I said, how much time as a politician do you get to spend with your kids? How many days in the week do you go, I wish I wasn't home at 7. I wish I would have been home at 4. And then how much quality time are you getting with the time that you've got? You're also trying to make a lot of change and a lot of impact, but the system is set up for you to have to go and do that in that way in order to make the change to kind of create anything that's going to be different. But then we only fund the ways that are going to create small implemented change. You know, we provide this for this, and then maybe the branch will fall off and we'll grow another branch. we still haven't fixed the core trunk of the issue. And it's really hard to do. It's so systemic and it's so intergenerational. I think we have got a lot to learn by able to just look in and see where it all started to fall down when we took you guys out of tribe.
That's exactly what it is. We're all living in a disconnected world. We're now more disconnected than we've ever have been. We move less than we've ever have. We eat more rubbish food than we ever have. Like it's easy to say that, you know, our mob had things sorted, right, for thousands of years. We also still have those answers to do that. So it's actually not hard. But it's a hard pill to swallow for people. That's what's hard. Because, you know, and I get it, like politicians and people in power are supposed to have the answers, and they don't. We're just so far off the track. And you know, I've looked at a little bit of your work, so I know that you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about here. We are so far off the path, it's not funny. Like we have absolutely, like somebody said to me a while back, Joe, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do with it? Like, to fix all these issues, what would you do? So I'd fund mums and dads to stay home with their kids.
That's right. That's amen. You know, I was literally talking to my mum this morning, and I think I said, we're trying to figure out, you know, why do I still have some things going on for me, and how sometimes I can slip and, you know, there's these core wounds that come out inside me in my relationship, and not because I'm human, but because of my experience as a human as to where these things came from. That I was trying to say to her, you know, I don't have to know the exact memory because I didn't have enough memory. But what I do know is that you were around for 6 months before you went back to work. And then I was handed over to not necessarily my grandma, not necessarily the other people in my, you know, really close-knit circle. I was handed over to nannies. So it wouldn't have really mattered at the end of the day because you weren't there and my dad wasn't there because you had to go back into society. That's not on you. That's on society. And that's on the way that it's set up. You didn't have enough money to be able to not do that. So thank you. And she goes, well, actually, it was 8 months. I was like, and I appreciate that it wasn't 6. So, but for me, I'm like, I wish it was at least 2. You know, the first most important years of a kid's life and our whole life are our first 2. And
you look at it, you know, the theory around the first 1,000 days and the impact of what that has, but also, you know, I spoke to Dr. Norrie Brown. She spoke to me about 2,000 days as well. So there's even challenges that I see with experiences. Think about this, right? How many kids, and we look down on this or we question this. How many kids cry every day because they have to get dropped off to go to school in kindergarten? In kindergarten, and then, you know, year 1 as well, with the, you know, the little brain spurts we have developmentally. You know, how many kids are still crying? I know that my daughter does. I know that my daughter cries every day, most days, for me to walk her into class, and then she cries when I walk away. And, you know, people can look at that and go, you know, you've just got a really problematic child that's not independent. Or we can look at that and go, like you just screwed your face up, right? But that's what people think.
Of course.
Because it's a race.
They bring that kid to me and say, why is my kid like this?
It's a race for our kids to sleep in their own bed the fastest and sleep through the night the fastest. You know, it's a race for our kids to walk first. It's a race for, you know, everything's a race. Everything's about competition. My kid got this. My kid got this score in their HSC. It's fantastic. You know, I failed every subject at school but music. Right, my job was sport for 10 years, and I failed PE. That's what you do at school is not an indication of what you're going to be after school. Right? Yeah, we put so much emphasis on these kids going to school. The world just shut down for 2 years recently.
Yeah.
Right? No kid was at school. You know, we're gonna but we'll also see the impact of what that did socially in kids leaving the house now.
Mm.
Right? So, like, we've just got things so messed up in how we do it. And no, the person that has the highest wage and works the hardest is applauded in society. We all want to be like that without realizing that those people probably have really poor relationships with their kids
And themselves.
and themselves for sure, because they're dissociating every single day of the week with what they're doing.
Well, their worth
And
is based on external shit, right? It's based on success. Success is measured in that way.
when it comes time for their kids in their deepest hours, like in their most challenging times and experiences, there's every reason that those kids will chase their problems, chase the solving their problems down the eye of a bottle, and talk and express their emotions to other kids and friends that they have in school, and not us as parents. It's because we never provided any type of safety for them in the early formative years of their life. So my daughter crying every day, I'm okay with. Me sleeping on the couch every night still, I haven't been in the big bed for 6 years, I'm okay with. Like, it makes no sense that us as adults push our kids to sleep in their own single bed by themselves when as couples we sleep with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's madness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. It seems to me at times, and I mean, I'm not giving up my day job. Literally, I'm going to keep doing this and I'll never not have a job. But it does seem to me at times, and I never lose hope completely, but it does feel that so much of it is so going to be so hard to reverse.
It's going to get a lot worse.
Yeah.
It's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
I guess it's like we could talk all day about how it can get better. And, you know, I really want to start talking in schools, and I want to start doing a lot of presentations and stuff like that and just being able to reach more people. And the thing that I would want to say in schools is not something schools will want to hear. And the things that I want to say to people that have, you know, that are all parents is definitely not something that parents will want to hear, you know? So it's hard to realistically get in front of that and then shift it. But then even more so, the government don't want to hear any of that.
Yeah. Jackson, I work in schools, right? I work in schools, and they label all these little kids as little shits of kids who are always, you know, getting in trouble and getting suspended. But the kids are being triggered by the teachers. Right? Because overworked, underpaid, and don't get a great deal of education when they're doing their 4-year degree fresh out of high school about trauma.
No trauma. Yeah.
Zero trauma. Like I found it absolutely mind-blowing that I went and lectured at one of the universities about Aboriginal communities and trauma and the impact of, you know, policies forced down by colonization. I went and lectured at universities to third-year medical students that hadn't done any work on trauma. And they're going to be walking out into communities writing script after script after script after script for behaviors without understanding that these behaviors are just a byproduct of experiences that they've had in their lives. That's why I say that Australia is so far off the mark with what we do and how we do things. Enter Joe Williams, Mr. Controversy.
Hey, man, I mean, you're saying what I think needs to be said, and I 100% agree with you. Where I know there's stuckness is actually where the fuck to start. besides the impactful work that we both already do, and thousands, tens of thousands do as well. You know, those advocates that are even in the medical professions or in the schools that are going, why the fuck aren't we teaching these kids about emotional regulation? Or the guys that are doctors and saying, why aren't you asking this person around, are they experiencing, where's their stress level at, and how maybe that's got to do with all their autoimmune diseases. So there's a lot of us out there doing a lot of this work. It's so systemic and so ingrained that we don't need 10,000 more, and that won't hurt. But where do we go? Where do we start?
I think for me, I'm doing my PhD at the moment, and that's what I'm looking at. This stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I know where we're going to start. And many people, more so in our community, in the Aboriginal community, know exactly where we're going to start. It's just about getting the people who hold the purse strings to start believing us.
100%.
I think, and that's the PhD. In why I did that, they haven't listened to us for 200 years, right? And recommendation after recommendation around challenges of relationships with our community have been handed down that they just don't listen to. So they're the biggest challenges, right? We need people to listen to us, like our community. When I'm talking about our community, and it's the same with all communities. I've also we just started a new charity, which is Our Way Academy, which is a school-based academy working with kids from K to 6. Again, I don't think that's early enough, but it's younger than the organisations and programs that are getting the hundreds of millions of dollars now. So I think that we need to, it's what we're doing with Our Way, starting to help young people, and this is all people as well, but our Way Academy works directly with Aboriginal kids, is, looking at our identity of who we are. What does it mean to be a young Aboriginal person? Both boys and girls. People say to me all the time, is it a sport academy because Aboriginal people are good at sport? I'm like, no, it's not a sport academy, because sport, when I was playing sport, was the most disconnected I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is actually find out authentically who we are. So it's an academy around, values, behaviors, and identity, helping young people to be the best version of themselves now. We say that we're creating a better now. We're not worrying about the future, because if we create a better now, the future will look after itself.
Mm-hmm. And I think that it's such a great way to start. So what would that look like if we were just to? How do you find your identity in a simplified way, right? Obviously, it's complex and it involves a lot of things, but where does that begin?
I think with authenticity.
Yeah.
Authenticity. Everybody, every single individual have got their own identity. The challenges that we have with young people today is that everyone, and not also young people, all people, is that everyone is trying to be something they're not. Right. And social media certainly doesn't help that. And, watching things on TV and all of the challenges that come with that. But I think leaning into authentically who you are. Once you find authenticity in who you are and what you do, I think there's a hell of a lot. And you start to be happy with that. You start to be comfortable with that. Right? Because the minute we start to be something else, we're trying to live a different life, is where, these challenges mentally and emotionally begin. We're all trying to be something that we're not.
So Gabor Mate says it really well. Ace says that we have two fundamental needs. We've got authenticity and we've got attachment, and we all have them. And what you're talking about is like when we lose our authenticity when we start playing a role within the system. And generally, we'll choose attachment over authenticity if those two things aren't in sync, right? If those two things aren't aligned with each other and can be in equilibrium and harmony, then to be authentic, which is to think that I can touch the moon as a little 4-year-old and say, I'm going to go there right now and it's time to go there now. And my parent or my caregiver says, don't be ridiculous. That's stupid. Only bad boys say that sort of thing. And I start thinking, I can't be authentic then. So I drop my authenticity and play the role, because if I don't play the role, I lose my attachment. The only way that I will survive fundamentally is if I have that attachment, despite how crazy or chaotic, or unsafe or dangerous it can be. I still rely on it to survive from those early years and for quite some years. And then that becomes ingrained, and that's where we go. So we teach kids to be authentic. How do you do that while their environment remains in a system that kind of chooses potentially where they have to keep dropping it in order to be in the system? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I also think, with our way, we can look and teach and model, good behaviors culturally around what that is and what that means. And that's where we believe that identity is birthed, around the authenticity with that. So teaching and modeling those behaviors and those old stories, like, people don't understand just how much wisdom those old stories hold. I'm talking about the old stories, the old dreaming stories, dreamtime stories, creation stories, right? How things came to be, and how things came to be with every bird, every tree, every mountain range. All right, those stories have deeply embedded values in those stories. When we start to live with those values, those values then start to influence our behaviors. And our behaviors, particularly to other people, is where we then create an identity, right? So we're looking at, being more respectful to people, having more care for people, treating people with more love, care, compassion, these different things. And once we are living with those values, we are then implementing those behaviors, and those behaviors then start to shape our identity of who we are. But it all comes back to the stories, right? So what we're doing, you have a look at around community today, all people, not just our community, all people, and then you align a value with the behavior that they're showing. And you look at, let's say politicians, they at times have to be not particularly authentic to who they are and the narrative that they're pushing. They're not living with a great deal of value when they're doing that. When they are living with the values that are opposing their true identity aren't particularly healthy, behaviors, right? So, or healthy even values. So you're looking at, I always say that the 5 core values that all the work that I've ever done has been based in, all the work that I've ever done since, moving into this wellbeing space, is based in love, care, respect, humility, and compassion. When we start to have compassion for people, we have less judgment. And when we start to have love, care, and respect for people, we start to treat people well. And then when we do those things, we do it with humility. So I think modeling behaviors that are deeply aligned with values is a great way to start for all people.
Yeah.
And if you have a look at the different challenges that we have in communities, have a look at the values that are underlying those behaviors. Right? Where do those behaviors come from? A lot of the behaviors come from a shitload of ego. A lot of those behaviors come from a shitload of disrespect, right? They're not aligned to those old stories. When you start to live with those old stories, them old dreaming stories, dreamtime stories, creation stories, you start to live with the values that are aligned with those stories, your behavior starts to change. So that's what we're doing with Our Way. Like it's trying to model this type of stuff, and how we model it is through dance, is through song, is through story, right? Is through artworks, all of these different things, right? So see how I'm starting to express how our old people lived and how they lived around caring for each other, looking after each other, caring for country, right? The challenge we have now, particularly with something like Our Way, is that we're still chasing money for a pilot for for these type of things, So like again, then you fall back into a system, So like it's a challenge. That's why I question: is the system set up for people to be well? I challenge that.
Yeah.
Because it keeps people in jobs when you're unwell.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like the way. As much as
Like,
right? But that's connection. It's what it's all about. Right? You'll come back to connect with you, connect with land, connect with everything around you, and then others, to be able to fully express yourself and be okay to do that. And finding those values, it's not that they don't exist. It's we're just out of alignment. That's what I always hear you say.
it's not that we don't exist. We're just not living with those values. The values are very much there. We're just living. We're opposing to those values. So when we look at some of the look at the 5 core values that I just spoke about: love, care, respect, humility, compassion. It's the opposite to love: hate. What's the opposite to care? Disrespect. Respect is disrespect. Compassion, judgment. Like, it's funny, all of those things that I spoke about that are opposing those values are a hell of a lot like the way we're living.
Yeah. And I think coming home was the name of a podcast that I did with a guy named Zeke Shaw. I'm not sure if you know him.
I know Zeke well. I've known Zeke for a lot of years. Yeah.
Zeke's
I've known the family very well. The family, like all of his brothers, nieces, nephews, I know them really well. Yeah.
He trained a lot of us. He trained a lot of us in essentially our way, right? In really being able to come home. And it always is something that I come back to and being like, this is where we learn. If we stop and we listen, then it doesn't matter what color, shape, size, gender we are. If we just listen, come back to us, come back to our body, and really reflect on where we've come from. And that can be with the intergenerational trauma where we've been ingrained into values that don't work. There still are fundamental things that do and that do exist. We just got to find them, because a lot of people's homes weren't safe. We've got to find a different way to come home to the home that we want to have, and the one that's within us. So, it really resonates with me, that sort of stuff, and reminds me a lot of that conversation with Zeke, and that's just got to be the way. And I believe, because of the way that you are and the way that you see the world and the way that you want to change and see change happen, is that it will work. It already is. So it will just keep happening. And I think the parent stuff is, it's got to be both. It's got to be how we talk to our young dads, our young mums, talk to their little ones as well. And you're doing, you're meeting all things while the fucking society just keeps doing its bullshit. We come into the smaller system and say, block out all this, let's just get this right. And then one by one, we've got community again.
Yeah. We start to pull people in on our path. You know, it's like I talk to people all the time, and they're like, you know, because I get you know dragged down, and you know people talk shit about me, and you know negative trolling on social media and stuff like that. You know, people say, how do you put up with it? What do you do? Like, I'm like, I just keep doing my best to model good behaviors. You know, I've connected with hundreds of podcasters with what I do. I like having these conversations, right? And those podcasters, they found out about me somehow. And, you know, maybe it's you, maybe it was the next person, maybe it was the last person. But you find out because I'm doing things in communities that are aligned to those values, that are just modeling those behaviors. Right. So I think if we just model behaviors, whatever it is, the word starts to get out. You know, people start to take notice. You know, I always talk about two really, really important quotes, two very different parts of my life, right? So one was in my speech, my acceptance speech, when I got the Wagga Citizen of the Year back in 2015, I think it was. And actually, it was railroaded a little bit. Like the speech was good. There was standing ovation, and people were crying, all that sort of shit. Like it was a good one, right? Put a lot of time and effort into it. But it got railroaded. It got railroaded because of the conversation where I didn't stand up for the national anthem, right? So then people didn't speak about the speech and how the speech was all about how we need to come together as a community, and how we do that is by, you know, learning different ways and different things of what we've done for thousands of years. It was railroaded by, you know, a different narrative, right? But in that speech, I said, I truly don't believe that non-Indigenous people were sent out here to rape, pillage, and take our land. I believe they were sent out here to learn from us. It's just taken us a couple of 100 years to find out that part, right? And then the quote, and I'm paraphrasing here, the quote from Bruce Perry and Oprah's book, What Happened to You? In that book, Perry says, how ironic that the people that have been most marginalized throughout the world will be the people with the cultures that we turn to heal our modern woes.
That gave me goosebumps.
Right. Like, there's a guy called Nathan Wallace in Aotearoa, New Zealand. He said to me the other night, he said, all the leading neuroscientists and trauma experts around the world are beginning to say that Indigenous people had shit sorted before the destruction of colonization. Right? People were sent here to learn from us, not the other way around. The ideology of white supremacy just overtook that at the moment. So you look at global warming, caring for country. We got the answers to this stuff, man. Right? How to care for our kin. Right? It takes a village to raise a child. We don't have a village anymore. We need to find the village again. You know, so all I can do is just keep doing me and just keep modeling good behaviors. And eventually people start to follow. You know, I'm not a leader. I don't try and lead people. I'll be with people. I'll be a shepherd and start to take people on the journey.
Yeah, man. This just needs to keep getting in people's ears.
That's why conversations are important.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I've even got really close mates of mine who go, oh, podcasts, you know, they're rubbish. You know, they just get on there and have conversations, and, you know, stack load of the wellness industry is not even backed up by evidence or, you know, the science of what that is. They're just talking about, you know, how bad they've got it and, you know, what they did to get well. And, you know, so like, but podcasts, conversations, plant the seeds in people's heads. And when you plant seeds in people's heads, you know, with a bit of luck, they start to grow. And we start to influence people in different ways.
Yeah. And you have a cool platform, and you've used that for a really good thing. And I can't wait to see what keeps happening with the parent TV. I think you're going to start doing, and just, you know, the dad stuff as well. And, you know, I'll be right by your side in in that journey as well, and how we can keep connecting and spreading the same message. And I truly believe that we are here to learn and from you guys and from each other in a way that once we get connected, how we keep connecting to be able to keep coming back.
That's what it is. Just we got to get connected with each other. Start to learn off each other. If there's good things that work for you, then maybe I can learn about them too. Like it doesn't need to be anyone's specific language or everyone's specific knowledges as well. It's about sharing good.
Mm-hmm.
The more people share good in the world, then we'll be in a better place.
Mm. So Joe, how can people find you? I'll obviously leave a few things up on the show notes and tag us when we post a little bit about this. But I guess there's Our Way Academy.
Yeah, so information's at the minute through my personal web, which is joewilliams.com.au, and then I share all over different social media accounts. Instagram's probably my biggest one, which is at @JoeWilliams_TEW, which stands for The Enemy Within. So at @JoeWilliams_TEW. And then, The Enemy Within on Facebook, and, LinkedIn's got an Our Way Academy. We're slowly building, we're looking to make some real significant and generational change in that young person space, with the primary school space. So it's been a slow burn. We've been working on this on Our Way for about 5 years. Just slowly building the foundations of what it is. Did some observations last year in a school for 12 months, just looking at what we can and what we can't, and what we should and what we shouldn't. Now we're pretty confident with how things are at the minute. We've still got a little bit of foundational work to get through, to then be able to get some pilot seed funding to be able to, hopefully scale out to have some significant change in communities and in schools. Essentially, it's the programming itself is taken out of the last 10 years of work that I've done around hundreds and hundreds of communities across the country, working with what works best for our mob. That stuff again is all about coming home. It's all about being authentic. It's all about learning about the values. It's all about creating and shaping our own identity, or our authentic identity. So I'm really excited about where things are at the moment. And then my PhD at the moment is, everyone goes, oh my God, like the grind of a PhD. And I'm like, I don't know, like what it is with other people, if they didn't really enjoy it, but I'm loving it.
Yeah,
I'm really loving the process of what's going on. I'm obviously only, not too far into it. So, I'm really enjoying that process. And, I just get to go out and help people the best way I can, every day in community, and just model those behaviors that I spoke about.
Well, it is really inspiring, man. And I think that the shepherd in you is, something that really, just makes me feel really connected to you. So I love that. And I think that you just keep doing you, and it'll keep shifting for people. So I appreciate you coming on. It's a real honor to have you here.
Thanks, brother. Look after yourself, and I'm sure we'll connect in person down the track.
Do you want to find out more about how therapy can help you kick some goals? Go check out findreasontherapy.com.au or the Find Reason Therapy Instagram page.